다 니가 똥바니도 곰세. 다 니가 똥바니도 곰세. 다 단지 계속 좀 만나시. 아니 샘디 shum바다. 되네 양 샘디 지게 지금 아케지 캥바. 캥바당 shum바 컨디지 충바 이나양 아니 될이야 야바도 안 똥바니도 곰쇼스 시제가 나무다시. 다 똥바니 곰나 아니 캡산으로디 캐벤 가르도 슬라비나 니가 똥바니도 곰 강도 착당 율 중체스 남샤견도 착당 유다 체바티세 아니 랑규르야 아니 추미 이지게 남도당 등신이디 유디디 안가란줄라 라완 가리요 말에서도 착당기 유디 통바당 착당계에 겹그레스 이나양 니가 똥바니도 곰베기 투저갑라 아니 지기 이 말게기 캥바이네레 shum바이네레 고랑신기 똥바니기 니주리야고 신의 통바이나 아니 차단계세기 시디 통원도 전에 유머 쭈바신도 따스 유머 쭈바는 통용으로 했어 캡상 못들이 송수다.
So here in the sort of middle of verse 14, where we first talked about how we can become self-inflated, overly sort of filled with pride or qualities, filled with our own sort of self-pride and filled up with our own sense of importance or qualities, feeling of having qualities, or we can become sometimes discouraged. Then the advice that's given to us here from Atiśa is to uplift our mind. And the way that he encourages us to uplift our mind is to meditate on, in both cases, meditating on the emptiness of those things. So what is the advantage of the pride and the sort of being and discouragement? And what is the advantage of meditating on this the emptiness of the situation, the reality of the situation? Well, normally in our own minds, what happens is that through the process of inaccurate engagement with objects, or what is sometimes called inappropriate attention, the way we sort of engage with to give things qualities they don't have, and that process being underlying that process, the clinging to grasping at things to have an inherent nature. Then if we're in that sort of if we're engaging in that way, then what happens is that whenever we see an object which is considered to be attractive or desirous, immediately desire will arise. And if we see an object which is unpleasant and we feel averse to, immediately will aversion and anger will arise in my mind. And so what it's encouraging us to do is whenever we're filled up with our own sense of self-importance or we become discouraged, is to remember the reality of things and see that the underlying basis of something we see is to understand that it has no intrinsic existence and see them as illusions or apparitions.
Okay. 다 제정가 주바 규미 주바 세티나 신다. 대 랑규비 슝게 나로라. 아니 규미 규마다부 통세 대 랑규비 슝 나로냐. 세브지 가르 연구할 수도 잠배 아니 규모 주버신도 통수도 규모캔 시기 소소한 게 랑부치 주베 있나 아니 고 유코랑 경연에 랑부치 제제도 제제 마셔봐라 아니 강사 코랑기 아니 그래서 그래 미가지기 레제 통대버지 마도 코랑 경연에 랑부치에서 지매바 통원도 전에 텔레미베 차신데 레기요 말봐. 대나신 제제 아란 쪽에 동반이 통첩에 쉬고다. 아니 유 코랑게 가나에 매바지 통첩에 쉬고들라. 아니 코랑 지 통당다 여당데 가려서는 주변에 신지마도 민두 세지마들 하기요 말. 대인도 전에 아란 쪽 차단 계석이 시 뒤뒤에 매바 차로 걸었다. 어디 가란저로 다 라와드 마소는 치슈 차단이 매버 수사기 치슈디 아니 규모신도 통야당 아니 유디기 응외네 랑외네 매버지 통야디 아니 슈잡야디 내가 어디 간 투디기 유서리 제장가 디나신 아란저기다 셈마지베 제야디 미니비 칙두도 아란저로 지금 매지기 독자든지 질라바 고연도 좀베 다셔신도 통다 세도 좀베 강바 동바지기 나로나니 팔 지기 밖에 접시도 인지게 나로 다셔스를 에고세들 봐 개고연도 좀베 와이 세도 비게네 와이 세지 마도 지금 셈 등나로네 베 투줘야 된다 개개요 말아 봐 어디나 신 다셔신도 따바진 우리 아니 다 류려야 알디버도 진주잖아.
And so, particularly as noted here, where a teacher is recommending us to meditate on the emptiness in order to whenever we get filled up with our pride or we get discouraged, and then he talks about seeing the objects of attraction and aversion when they appear as like illusions or sort of created illusions which have been created. And in the Svartantrika and Madhyamaka school, they talk about a particular example which is used in order to understand how things appear like an illusion, in the sense that something is, it's a sort of creation of made by a kind of illusion created by sort of a sort of magician or apparitional force, where they use the example of an elephant. A magician who creates the appearance of an elephant in a sort of theater, but he uses a sort of mantras and various other things to sort of trick the eyes of the audience, and those for whose eyes are sort of tricked will see solidly out there elephants and horses, and this sort of relates to us, our sort of minds and eyes being tricked by delusion and seeing the objects to exist from their own side. But once you see through the trick, each person, if they're not affected by the magician's sort of mantra, etc., then there will be no attachment to there'll be no attachment or aversion to the object, because after understanding emptiness, for instance, and then you understand that there's nothing from from the side of the objects at all, and that it's only illusion and nothing more, then you will destroy the basis for attachment and aversion and see that basis as completely non-existent, that there's nothing from his own side. And if you then following on from that, if you hear people speak unpleasant words to you, then it's like being in a cave where we shout into a cave, "Oi!" and the sound comes back, "Oi!" and there's nothing more than that echo. And so here we understand that things are seen in only as an illusion, a mistaken way, and we don't get upset by them.
다 지상의 디나로네 아란주 삼도야 거로지가 똥발에 녀바 슈침부지 대원도 잠베 아니 최탐지 코랑면에 매두 다 단다 튕기비 따와 시하진 누구여 봐 저상가 코랑 유응면에 지에민도 시도 잠베 튕기비 삼도다 축치셔데 딱시중원에 면도 세티 딱시중원에 셔르기도 잠베 딱시중원에 면도 세티 게지 시고다 남샤 유건에 아주 좀 전가래 코랑 경원에 요데 딱시중원에 셔르기도 왔어 튕기비게 다디 배대거나 저랑 균전 배들 로버리스 코랑 경원에 매데 딱시중원에 셔르기도 왔어 수시고 세상에 고당마도 고당도 마선에 또 로하도 와 내가 지금 시부래 다디 튕기비게 까내래 제장가 어디인데 아니 덕시 중간에 매바들아 가로지는 녀바야 녀원도 잠베 람상 주만의 시리스 시도 말해 람상 가리시 그랬어도 다 민둑 녀별로 디기리 대두 체달을 홍르고 요래 제장가 녀바도 단다 라맘 고마망 보지고 손도 잠베 민두 냠베 로 제단데려 좀젠디 이 직디 란저 가르치는 소남기 잡된 슈침부지 매다나 매나 아니 람상거랑 민두 냠베 로치게 지다 아니 매네 가리어레세 지금 셈나로 초와시라 매되니 지금 무요레스 당원에 소남기 잡된 또도 여되니지나 아니 고상대에서 만나야 돼 가르고 그걸 세도 선배 동반일이야 제바 제단고란다고 말해 동반이 가르에서 고랑원에 여러 말해 아니 저 담지 이 주마다고 밀람다고 선 도스네 남산 타지에 계제 말해 계지슈디 컨트스 두그레스도 동반일로 당포 퇴섬 진행지기 삼로된 나로를 동반일이야 지침부 차야 돼 가르치는 데 세도 선배 리서치 가르치는 지구요래 제바디 가르치는 지구요래서도 아니 단답반데 다와차베기 우만주벌 아니 심지어 두베나로라 다 기스데 관리 송요 봐 제상 뇨모다 뇨모기 샤비 꾼디 마시게 봐도 알레게 땐도 대화 톱게 매바데 짜는 자탄 타 최송스 데인디지 뇨모다 뇨모기 샤베 아니 꾼다다 탐지 가릴 때는 연구도 세도 예바 탐지게 짜와데 아니 가 시도 등진 친지로 로델 때는 기도 우스 디바도 타지 데 타지 오늘 선배 딘지기 아니 가르쳐 그래 등진 디기 신유 신비 유디나 신 요래 요 말에 로 튼든 레 말에서도 딜로 튼든 레멘도스 로 튼든 매베 인도 선배 디기 준비 로초 다 매바디 로 튼튼지 로 튼튼 인도 준비 로 튼튼디 가서 싶으시 뭐 공부 디기 랑신기 아니 다든 가루고요래 다도 준비 다든 가루도 준비 다 딜라니 안 nenjo 바스기요 nenjo 바인 다는 거 버치 당 다네 손 nenjo 바 차송스 제가 지좀 멜라 nenjo 좀 먼저 지좀 멜라 세디 뒤리 차오라다 아저에다 디버들 레터 가지고 그러시 동반이 컨트리에서 제 리서치 저비체 니시부체 팽기요 말이 다 디버들 레서는 신에 당한저 nenjo 바세야다 아니 신에 최철세야다 아니 두벌 전세 다도 참만 지강도 있어요.
And so here, this sort of idea about things existing from their own side, and now we've just mentioned the Svartantrika Madhyamaka, but then for taking the Prasangika Madhyamaka as a sort of basis of our explanation, and the way in which things do not exist from their own side in the Prasangika view of things. And so really what this is often stating is that the things do not exist from the side of their basis of designation, and not not existing from the side of the basis of designation, even though they appear from the side of the basis of designation. Now, other lower schools use the reason that because things appear from the side of the basis of designation, therefore they must exist from the side of the basis of designation. That's usually how we see things, and somehow some of the other lower schools also present it. But Prasangika Madhyamaka has the complete reverse view. Because it appears from the side of the basis of designation, it cannot exist from the side of the basis of designation. So they have a very different, very opposite way of presenting and understanding the reality on that point. So different point of philosophy and practice. So nothing exists from the side of the basis of designation. So if a person investigating these things comes to that understanding that things do not exist from the side of at the basis of designation, they don't exist from their own side, it's still very difficult usually for people to then say immediately from that things are like an illusion. The tendency is to think more like things don't exist at all. That's the sort of to fall more towards a kind of nihilistic position, and those with very little sort of supportive background of supportive merit, with a little of that, will perhaps have no feeling, even if they do discover that. They do some research into the nature of reality, but they don't develop any kind of feeling, even if they do come to the conclusion that nothing exists from its own side. Or they may fall into this position of absolute sort of sense of absolute non-existence, of nihilism. Now, someone with a little bit more sort of stronger merit may understand that that things don't exist from their own, so they're empty of existence from their own side, and still, again, may not be able to get completely that things are dreamlike, that they're illusion-like, but that kind of a person with a little bit more merit will have been someone who is engaged in hearing and uh, hearing, listening to teachings, and then contemplating the meaning of those teachings, and will have a sense of value about why they are doing their research into the nature of reality. What's the point of them in examining it? And so these kind of people will be more like the people which are mentioned in Chandrakirti's Entering in the Middle Way, in the 6th chapter of Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way, where there's a verse which describes how the yogis engage in the process of the negation of selfhood, and how they understand that the mental afflictions and the faults caused by the mental afflictions are the things. Those are the things which are causing us suffering and preventing us from having happiness, and those preventing us particularly from having permanent happiness. And so they place all the blame here on the faults, all of these faults, they place the blame on the sort of strong clinging to identity, a strong sense of self-grasping, or clinging to a sort of identity view. And they understand that the object of that sort of identity view, or what's called the view grasping at the perishable collection, they understand that the object of that view and the object of it are not in accord with reality, but the opposite kind of mind, the counter mind to that, the understanding of selflessness, a lack of intrinsic nature from their own side, is actually a mind which is in accord with reality and perceives the reality itself. And so they sort of cultivate this then they sort of, through this context, this is the context which these people with some merit then engage with the idea of selfhood. And so these are the people like these are what the real yogis are like, the ones who are making effort, who really attempting to accomplish the path, really doing proper research into the lack of into the nature of reality, really making effort to get the sort of siddhis or accomplishments. People like Milarepa themselves, these are the kind of people that sort of engage. These are the real yogis that engage in this way. So that verse reads, seeing with their wisdom that all afflictions and all faults stem from the identity view, grasping at the perishable collection, and knowing that the self is the focus of this identity view, the yogi engages in the negation of selfhood. So this is the sort of context with which that kind of practitioner approaches emptiness, not as just the nature of reality as being a curiosity, and not having any feeling about it. For these people with less merit, not having a feeling about it, and then tending to fall into a nihilistic position when they sort of apprehend or start to understand that things lack in existence from their own side.
제장가 넬 조르세디 베베기 시디 넬 조르세 넬세도 셈 넬마 단다 봐도 아주 셈디 샥사기 유디 아주 먹으라 야고 치요 말에 정신 관리지미 신기요 말에 제장가 셈코란 게 샥사기 정신 디기 오마디 주마마임바 덴바 지간라 샤주 총무소나 디 니마텔라 아니 셈디 덴바가나 샤토바 연자 셈데 넬말 조르바 셈디 레메발 조르바 어디 인도 잠베 넬 조르세 데시디 작와 제가다 다랑 갈라네 아주다 신의 년조르세 디레마도 뒤에는 아주 원시 연애를 삼대 연애를 신의 연애를 하동 연애를 디면은 년조바 작용 맞다 당보시나
And so particularly what is mentioned in that verse is a sort of the word the yogis engage in the negation of selfhood in this way, and for the word yogi, it is made up of two syllables in the Tibetan, nel and jor. Nel has this sense of a sort of ordinary, and jor is to see usually to sort of connect with the ordinary, so to speak. And up to now, the kind of the basis through which our mind sort of operates is not connected with what is real, or we don't know the reality, and is not connected with what is real, but is actually engaging and connected in a false way. And what the yogis do is to connect with the when we call it ordinary, what we mean there is non-false, what is true, the reality of things, that in the meaning of ordinary in that way, and therefore these yogis connect to this non-false truth, the actual reality, and that's what it means to be a yogi. It's not about having deep levels of concentration, developing calm abiding, or detailed forms of special insight. It's about connecting with the ordinary, which is actually means the reality.
올라서 다들의 마음이 drop 이나 다 릴로 내버 총배치 응은지 레서 따버자 외태 공부네 랍네싱 리더십 로션도 당이 바자신 차고매바 내버자스 다디 로종기 남샤준도 아주 동랭기 냠nen도 수르지 숨고도 와 당아랑 저기 릴로야 내버 주딘제다 나자딘제 총배갑라 아니 야바도 대 토자고자다 지 수고 대마데라 총도 야바도 nga르기 니 지기 중아마지 등원은 그렇지 아니 딘데지를 연구요라마도 다스 지기 토자고자 지기 나와서 여러분들 자원이나 말이스 대인도 담배 응인지 레서 따와차스 아니 외태 공부내 자신 세도 외태 공부 세도 담배 아니 아주 마선데 남산 누구에 잡 조조지 마 쳄체 남산 배 튜닝 아직 최선이 레마선 당 아직 신 컴플레인트 마 쳄체 때에서 대구 레세 이 이제 다른 부른 저기 깨지지 버려면도 또 저기 소소기 냠nen치 고급들 라운드 전에 디냠nen도 섬 저르토버지 제제 아니 시위시고 나니 신이 시 다이나 오늘 전에 녀마가 레드줄 찍으래 섬네 아니 레리 이지직다 아니 레디 매버스기 섬로직 레야기 고급된 아주로 공부를 나 다른 나와되기建议체제 말라 섬로다야 망부지라도 섬지 대원도 전에 아니 리다시베 로션도 당기 다님 바자신 스튜 아니 강도도 소소기 딜이야 견들 따치 이현래야 지금 시에마되지 소소기 냠낸 제 고급라송 섬지 아니 차과 매버 네버 차스 부지기 차단교 공도 마송 버치지 톱데 데이터가 최고리스 네버 차스 아니 따도 이덤 댄자신 레로뇽데 중베체 대제 나 달라 년타신 스타디우스 이덤 댄지신세도 남셔준도 이덤세도 양아란주 제레스를 소베기 아니 소소게다 공약을 하도 좋고 또 초구 유지리 돼 이나야 단다 니가서 이 담시베 담이 담세도 준비 당아란주기 남셔준도 곰마토에 지다 다 곰나 되여봐 자 친구지라도 딜리 이 담쓰고 봐 근데 이담디 가르레 슬라나 안 단다 응기 레서 따치 단당 아란줄 용샤주게 릴리 숑베 나자데 아니 텔라테니 신의 망보지 죽고막 딘데지 레디 왕게 알레 겐딘데지 용바레 다 주디 마세발레 데부디 뇽뇽 데고고요레 아니 주딘데지 세야라 아니 다음에도 베셔랍당 아니 지게 전주 샘라 소바도 마곰다 탑해버리 총송 세두점에 고급디 마셔 토니 이담 땡차싱 세다 디보도 지고 있으래.
And so here, sort of just before this section on the yogi, we actually read, we looked at verses 15a and b. When you hear unpleasant words, view them as mere echoes. Now, sort of looking at verses, the second two lines of verse 15, last two lines, sorry. When injuries afflict your body, see them as the fruits of past deeds. So here, usually this is sort of text from the mind training genre, and within one specific part of mind training practice is that of the of Tonglen, and here it says. When injuries afflict us, see them as our previous deeds. So instead of having that sense that when sickness comes and a body is not feeling comfortable or unwell, we don't think of it as just some sort of random occurrence of the situation, but we understand that it's not something that just immediately happens. It's something that is based on previous causes and conditions. So we should not be complaining too much about these things. We should sort of understand it in a much longer context of the previous actions that karmic actions that we've done. And then in the beginning of verse 16, it says, dwell utterly in solitude beyond town limits like the carcass of a wild animal. So this doesn't mean that we have to really sort of go far away in order to do our practice. In fact, we'd have to be very careful about this, because if we have encountered difficult situations that might be uncomfortable for us, not just sickness, but other situations, then actually, difficult situations, if we just get far away from them, we actually lose an opportunity to practice and train in them. And sort of, if we stay by, but we, in a sense, dwell in solitude, in the sense that we understand the solitude of thinking that this opportunity to understand and practice in relation to things being the results of our previous karmic actions. So we can relate this again to sickness of the body, and not sort of moaning about it too much, but understanding it to be an opportunity to practice based on our previous, condition, which has arisen from causes and conditions of our previous actions. And then sort of seeing then it says, hide yourself away in the forest and live free of attachment. And again, this doesn't mean sort of going off and living in some remote corner of the world. What this means is seeing the faults of our attachment and also our aversion, and then staying far away from those. That's the context. In verse 17, it says, always remain firm in your commitment when a hint of procrastination and laziness arises. Now, particularly this first line where it says, always remain firm in your commitment. The word yidam is used in the Tibetan, which can often refer to that personal deity or tutelary deity, like Chenrezig or Atara or something, one of these deities. But actually here, what it's really meaning is the deeper meaning is that because normally we don't understand the nature of the way things are, and here sort of it means more like a sort of commitment, holding to a commitment. So not the commitment to a deity, but for a commitment, for instance, to understanding that sickness comes from previous causes and conditions, and therefore comes from our previous karmic actions, and then understanding that in those kind of unpleasant conditions will never, unpleasant situations will never cease to exist unless we get rid of the causes of those situations, and therefore understanding that there's no other way to get rid of the causes than to understand the nature of reality, and therefore eliminate from the root the causes of all of those the sufferings and unwanted conditions, and then thinking. So remain firm in our commitment means not losing the opportunity to understand that perspective and practice in that way. So not losing the perspective of, for instance, sickness coming from previous actions, and also understanding how even those rooting out those causes and conditions lies in understanding the nature of reality.
Tene dadu yung lelo nyamle chungbe se teze dala yan changshin dushu nyingbu chambar cha da tene kede dii kapto yan lelo shamalo soba tenzegi chungbe kapso ani teze dala yan changshin se du nyabardo susu ya ani goba she toba dang ani susu ya ani darshe jeche 당에 최당대 때다 예 타면비 최당대 지고 지정제 지기도 봤어 다 달린 최단 제베 토네 예 삼로 당당 되지 말이다 예 삼로 당당데 다른 알란리아 갱에 받든지 최베 갑라 아니 심슈 깨제 견다나 레다 뇨모를 견다 연된다나 아니 텔레 타리아 지다 텔레 타나 지무로 녀베 아니 최려야 이제 땡로 당야게 고급된지 진에 디 아니 다른 촐라다는 드마송 시제네 랑게랑려야 또스 거바셰고스 거바셰고야 오 견줘봐 년장세도 준비 견줘봐 소소를 견줘고래 시제 내 남아 지그래야
And so here, this is the next three lines of the last three lines of verse 16, where it says, "With a hint of procrastination and when a hint of procrastination and laziness arises, at that instant enumerate your flaws and recall the essence of spiritual conduct." And so, particularly when we fall under the sway of laziness, these and sort of kind of muddled kinds of mind, and then we need to, we sort of fall prey to these sort of ways of acting and thinking. Then we need to remember that you need to really identify that I'm acting like a very ordinary person here. I've actually had the opportunity to meet the Dharma, and so I should be able to sort of create a different kind of way of thinking. And so in the third line where it says enumerate your faults, this is it's a particular sort of way of pointing out what the faults are, but not particularly pointing out the faults of ourselves so much to say, but to see the faults of karma and mental afflictions, and then expressing those faults.
아니 신라 송브로마와당 시도 잠베 아니 랑신기 셈나로 이동원 외기다 삼로디 깨토바 제고바 전주 셈바지나 전주 셈에 냠nen신이지나 코 이동원 통발라 당불네 파종원이 김무쇼고 파종원이 약한데 지기위면 깨져면 봐 수수영원의 상보지 장보지제 아니 배지 90도 되면 돈에 파종원이야 아니 수도바지 내랜드부터 마선 제토바지 고르스 다도 좀 내버 자 디기 냠랜드부터 나녀딩 아주 들은 거서 점빌링 나로라다 저름 치료들이 다 정거름치 차 테마제 참말로베 시리 좀좀 전에 점빌링을 패줘야 돼다 공과요서는 디리다 다도 좀지 내버 자
And so then moving on to 16 there 17 where it talks about so if you do encounter others, speak peacefully and truthfully. Do not grimace or frown, but always maintain a smile. So this so whether we know we encounter people we know, or whether they're people we don't know, in the sort of Bodhisattva way of practicing, we're always trying to encounter them or sort of engage with people as to see them in an affectionate manner. That we should always deal with them in an honest and straightforward, very honest, straightforward, and respectful way, and show them what is a genuine smile, not a false. It actually says in the Tibetan, not a false smile, but genuine smile. And in the world as we know it today, His Holiness is a prime example of this. You can almost take this as a quote, or a sort of a quote to show how the Bodhisattvas act and how His Holiness acts, because he smiles in a very genuine and close way and sees all he meets, whether he knows them or doesn't know them, with affection and a smile. So we should also meet people in this way.
shengi semni songbi tse zoba tamje pangje shi dadu sudan tenpa chas tang aranzo chenju sembi nyamne nangye chigla ani me shenda chebe tse tangbo ani aranzo da chenju sembi ki dui ngobu shi sungba na shencheje tangbo jimbe ki nyamne di la ya che goya di nyen li ya ngazuma sonne shen la ya jimba tangbo di dui ngobu shi na tangbo di cha yuwa ya di mi suji ne 거지 짐바 땅나 마가니 수지 매봐 대인도 담배 짐바 치중 같이 당규네 다 조 짐바 세야디 뭐부지 짐베 깨져 말해 진야기 그 동외 삼바 세치 파종원에 지 내내데만 손에 지 개무지 셔베 이내래 파종원을 두수지 때 도베 인데서 삼바 짐바라 봐 인도 담배 딘리지 아주 그파 녀리야 냠내데만 손에 당부디 제도바 짓고 그래 텔라 녀바 세나기 녀바디 양내양도 따지 세나 여나 신도 투에 매바지 타취지 아니 짐베냠는 돼 아니 짐베데 야골레 마투에 야 찍디 가르스나 차도 왕도 송베이나 야 도스가고 요래 차도던 전심 용도 왕도 로이나 야 신든 쳐투면서 차도 때문에 방자신 신기 시스템의 송외체 저번 넘버 어다 신기 시스템 송화 시도 준비 신기 된도 내가 가르쳐봐 이나야 아니 또 신경 제대로 마도 아니 그래서 그래 피기기 깨져 지 삼로단단 담민 디비 땡기 아니 소소 심주 차안로에 개요 말 가진서는 거의 제대로 봐 수수체도 말아 봐 삼로단단 지 어디 인도 준비 신기 시스템의 송외체 저바탐제 방자시스도 되니 빠종어도 저바담에 저랑 가르치고 해야 되냐 하고 고매 지지년년 고고 제제 가르라고 있네래 네 생기 코에 된다를 채비니 섬지 삼로 곰나 대고 요레스 디 가져도 곰 대고 요레스들 아니 서바도 말아버티 신기 쓰는 좀 저바탐제 방자시 다도 서나 된 버쳤어 서바를 땡고 요레스 이 셈 송야디 서바를 하요 말레스 다디 전주 셈비기 서바 곰단데 송두 남샤준도 아주 서바디 대진적이 말봐 남샤준도 지금 서바 냠네 쳐야디 아니 땅에 셈데 영마송나 아니 수수기 아니 뇽몬페야당 텔레데네 레사야당 텔레데네 아니 지금 먹고 삼도당 거요 봐 근데 단다디 전주sembe게 냠네 제베가라 니 신기 된도 디 제베인자 니 미신기 삼로당야 될 니 네버제나 자원이 지금 말에 시제 셈송데 신기 셈송데 무슨 로제 요즘에 저 상말로 세복금 이야기 미규 세복금비 거바 상말로 와 있는 요즘에 디교 상말로 니야바 체조 송고요 그래서 저던 점 봐차 디바도 지그러셔
Then we come to the next the verses of the sort of verse, sort of like verse 19, which only has 3 lines, where it says, "In general, when you see others, be free of mindfulness and delight in giving." And so this also connects with the what are called the 4 ways of gathering disciples. So it's in sort of in trying to, particularly in the Bodhisattva practice of the wish to sort of gather students or disciples in order to help them, not for one's own selfish purposes, in order to help one. And so in the first one of those is actually giving, sort of and there's nobody who doesn't like receiving, being given something or receiving something, and it doesn't matter whether those what the object of giving is, whether it's large or small. And it's also not just about giving sort of material things. It's about the mind of wishing to give, and it's also about, and then there are also many other ways to give, such as giving sort of delight or light relief to people, giving them time. There are many, many ways in which we can offer somebody something, and there's nobody who doesn't like that. And we should definitely, there'd be no way for us to, this is from the Bodhisattva's perspective of wishing to help others, there's no way to get sort of gather disciples if we come across, if we are miserly. and don't take delight in giving. So if we should avoid the faults of miserliness and any form of sort of jealousy or competitiveness. Then if we're under the sway of those kind of states of mind, then we'll not be able to engage in these kind of practices at all. And then it says in verse, so the 3 lines of sort of verse 20, where it says to help soothe others' mind, forsake all disputation, and be endowed with forbearance. And so again, the here in the Bodhisattva practices, the Bodhisattvas are engaged for the sake of others. So, for instance, if they say some words which are kind of sweet words, they're not saying it for their own benefit to get some advantage, but they're saying these things only for the purpose of others. So for instance, here to help soothe others' minds. And should we not get involved in sort of complicated sort of disputes and debates and discussions about things, and since we don't really know exactly how people are and what they would think, we shouldn't get too much involved in telling them what to do and caught up in sort of debates about points of view or opinions, because everything is not for the benefit of the bodhisattva practitioner, but for the benefit of the other person. And it says be endowed with forbearance or patience. So practicing patience, there's then this is nothing. There's no greater practice than the practice of patience. And we have to be honest that the way that we practice patience and the way that bodhisattvas practice patience definitely has some difference there, in the sense that our practice of patience can often be with an eye on the wish not to commit negative karmic actions, but and also that we're worried that our mental afflictions may get out of hand and increase. Therefore, we often practice patience in that way, which is sort of more of a personal purpose. Whereas the bodhisattvas are practicing patience for the completely for the welfare of others. So they're actually not trying to protect their own minds, but bodhisattvas are actually, with their engagement with others, are actually trying to protect others' minds so that they don't bring any harm to others and that others don't come to any harm. And so they're actually much more aware of the protecting the minds of others. And so we need to understand that these different sort of needs or necessities or directions for practice.
Okay. 사조메 다도 추니 투버차 정수 투버세디 어가 매징 세도 좀 벨레 지기 메기 벨레 시에로 소바도 조랑 얘기다 야치면서 거전서는 벨레를 시에도 수수선 추루고 봐 근데 어가들이 시행기 아니 지기 미 초고 싸워든지 투수는 얘디 야치면서 다도 추는 내봐자 현라 내봐 방자시 급여 수준 내봐자스 다 셰르야 거두기네 지기 90제바다 텔야 아니 지기 섭지가리 주군이 주인스 그베 주진 내버 차스도 그 다지가 소래 조 그버디에디 거린지 수tem바들이 신기 거린도 양양도 돼야지 거린 마트는 그버디 말봐 제상가 그 말한주 최기 자와지기다 매지기 남샤진도 마고 송구여데 말한주 연된 탐지 기획이 자와도 직디 이 거린지 수tem들이 배나 지금 라마 자침부치 상계의 전주 선보 탐지된 추뒤제 아라랑기 자외라마다 냠도 돔 샤요도 선배 자외라마디 자체에서 개지기요 말데 디 거린체 삼로 다운도 선배 아니 단다봐도 상계 장면 전부에 전주 선보 장면 전부에 된저기 단다 라마 디기 중에 알도 중요해 딜라 라바다 거린 셰도메스 되는 라마디 개침부시 위차요 찍으려도 와 되네 양 알은조 전주샘 상제주 고방 세다 자침부 차에 찍디 심진지 거린지 수tem에 토네 아니 심진지 자침부지 사유제디 개침부지 전주샘 개침부 상제주 고방 자침부디 전주샘 개침부 차는데 chanju sim 개침부 쳐야지 닝지 침부 개침부 차는데 닝지 세야지 샘진을 미고요래 샘진 거딘 템부터네 아니 신의 진 섭되고 삼로 될 된다 예두점에 신라 그바 세바당 엄상 신기 거딘 세야지 냠도 저도 주소고도와 전에 그배 주기 never chance.
And then to verse 21, where it says, "Be free of flattery and fickleness in friendship, and be steadfast and reliable at all times. Do not disparage others, but always abide with respectful demeanor." So here, nobody we should not be fickle or sort of flattering people for the purpose of getting something. No, but sometimes when people meet others for the first time, they may wish to, get something from them, and they just sort of flatter them, but then are unreliable. We should not act in those ways with when we're in our friendships and relationships, and we should remember. Be steadfast and reliable at all times, and do not put others down. But one very important is the last line here: always act with a respectful demeanor. Always abide with a kind of respectful attitude. And I've mentioned this many times before when we talk about. One of the sort of real important sort of roots of Dharma practice is that of understanding always being appreciating qualities, and then having respect and gratitude on the basis of gratitude, and therefore respect on the basis of seeing the qualities. So, for instance, seeing the qualities in the Buddhas. And thinking of the Buddhas as so incredible, not by way of understanding what their qualities are, and then remembering the kindness or having the gratitude towards them for those qualities and showing us the way. So, for instance, our root lamas, we imagine as the root lamas as being a kind of a sort of of all the sort of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that have come, our root lama is the sort of, you can imagine them as a sort of representative of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas as the one we met, and therefore, and bringing us the sort of, understanding the kindness of those, of say our root lama and the qualities that they have, and then having respect for them because we see the qualities and we understand the kindness towards them, and this also goes for. But this also goes for all sentient beings, not just for the gurus or the Buddhas. The gurus on the bit we have this sense of gratitude towards the gurus and the Buddhas in the sense of attaining, helping us to attain the state of enlightenment, or sort of showing us the path to enlightenment. But also an important role is played in the role of bodhicitta in attaining that state of enlightenment, and bodhicitta, of course, is necessarily developed through developing strong compassion, and that strong compassion is only developed. It's not developed in relation to the Buddhas. It's developed in relation to the sentient beings, and therefore we should also understand how we achieve the state of enlightenment based upon all the other sort of suffering sentient beings, and that we should have a sense of gratitude and kindness towards them, and therefore seeing that sort of quality or benefit and having and having that gratitude towards them then leads us naturally to have a respectful demeanor. So that's what real respect means.
Okay. 다 디지체. 되네 셴라. 좀 뒤로다. 셴라 담아 제베시 닝지 펜심 템버 차스. 다 디네가 전부 셴라야 담아 당 셴라 라베 잡아 점시기 셴라 펜마 펜 태좀래. 이나 닝지 군의 랑치 셴라 펜바 즉 제베이나 담아 지다 랍자르 잡이나 샘나리 기부 쇼주여래. 배샹배샤 오면래 배나 말랑 지기 칼라라고 주셔야기 레시피 자친부지 수술을 여비나 아니 파종 어디 오늘 지기 수술이 닝지 매색이 매질을 나가도 깔리 쉽지요래 틱톡 직쇼로나다 아니 뱃사설에 단답아도 수신이 아마도 요말에 되는데 수신이 망부차나 angala tongla duguri nyedi di cha duguri samne serna di masona leya di dwa ta pensim gu kunna na ji ningji kunna na ne di recipe di dewi na me re di zo jik che me zo gu ne tane be jik del tene koran zu di ji chue di ji longje won de zambe pe ga gre ta nyege recipe je shi de me mangu ji le pen tho so samne shibuji ga gi ba ningji yin ji la 인지 매리니지라 갖다 들려가냐 해요 말이. 엔디나로네 사간지도 사간데 배교시차 사간데 교친부들 차 소소롱회디에 말아 통대 말아 명대 말하는 칼리 쉬우지요. 어디나 진짜지. 인지군은 나네 지 제베이나 그 소소를 접상케 라마라 계져요 말이 배 디지징 얘기 편도시라서 디송 퀄리펜은 디송 세게 섬도 줘봐. 어디 송구살 다마 제베가 인지민지 인지 셈다 덴베톤 찌르징도 따오르스.
Then the first two lines of 22, where it says, when giving advice, maintain compassion and altruism. And so it's doubt, if just giving advice itself, there's definitely a doubt as to whether just giving advice is beneficial or not beneficial. But however, if we arouse in ourselves compassion and then sort of try to help or try to give advice in that way out of compassion or altruism, then our minds are certainly much more happy, and maybe also it's more effective. And maybe to give a sort of more mundane example of this is if somebody has a really sort of special recipe for a particular kind of food, like a family secret recipe or something like that, and there could be two kinds of people who have that kind of special kind of recipe. One who is very sort of self-orientated and miserly and doesn't really want to sort of doesn't really want to give that sort of secret away, but wants a lot of kind of almost like respect in return for it. They want to sort of return. They're not sort of giving it away freely. And so that kind of person maybe also, if they sort of make a restaurant and then sort of the restaurant and only sell that kind of food in that particular restaurant, and they want the big name and fame of that. And if it doesn't go well, then they feel very unhappy about it. But there could be another kind of person who has the same, has an extremist kind of secret, amazing recipe for something, who completely out of joy and compassion and sort of love for others wishes to give it away freely, and thinks nothing of themselves, but only thinks, well, if the others enjoy it, then if they enjoy it, then that's of great benefit. That kind of person would be, that would be the way to sort of engage in doing benefit.
다 되네 최로 구워 미듭신 강매 될라 듬바당스 아니 최저 넘버 주 최저 넘주 권에니 인생 체버 배버차 세시 겨워 잠보 공부기 당마치게 나로라야 최저 넘버 주 시주 송바들이 디리도가 다디 최로 구워 덮당딩이라 삼당베나 아라한주냐나 지금 아주 망체지 다 최려야 가부요래 이지 여러분스나 또즈 가부러지요래 아니 다 이지 되지 여버디다 대반이도 도스 냠도 샤샤브르지래 마도 아니 되게 다들 가르스나 참참 지그 도즈 몰람도 잡아 컨텐츠 쇼 쉐원도 준비 에 요모 도송비 상황을 지금 러시아도 준비했더니 그러지네 수수 제단 지금 먼저 계셔요 말에 다 단답하도 예 최체위인데 최고 편마선스 파루도아 최상한테 최를 꼬아 담고 요새 다 최대마선은 그 유전 부선 소배 터는 로고도 전에 최기 나로 송셔주 따다지 마세체 가로진의 로숨주십주 지금 최연장지 근데 담아대 내니 지금 간년도 친구 시켜온데 다 최고 편토 마선스 아니 라바도 지금 라마도 라마 버루를 따다지 마리도 전에 아니 다 라마를 그 요초르데 이나요 아니 라마 디기다네 다 디직 총마선라나 오즈리지리 안 되네딜이야 명칭부 따지 다 최를 처음에 도세지 이거 왕안 주나 리루와 어디 송거래 최를 구하면 대신 강매 텔라 듬바당서 강 소설 매바 지에게 최 텔라야 따부자고 그래서 따부자단디 자와 전부 공부기 최주바 넘버 주스여베 나로네 아니 최딜 이길을 튀었어도 딜이야 정답을 제베게 저래요 디양내양도 아니 지금 딜이야 류가 이숨경문에 강토도 지금 매주 땅에 지게 저래요 되네 처바표 봤어 알아주 오늘 지게 디기 야보지 용해야 된다려야 손음 쏘고 있게 저래요 아니 되네 짐바땅와 아니 지하를 군조를 짐바땅 말씀진기 딜이야 짐바땅고 왔다 짐바땅 아니 최양의 양도 년바 아니 최양의 양도 로바 되네 최 로바나 신 되는야 다다 죽어도 죽는도 짐바 아니 잡도 템바세도 점be 아니 백 강도도 미션발에 디기 직소수 삼셔요디 미션발에 딱다지 얘기 냠내 잡아는 신 미션발이 셰투도 투무도 디 잡도 템바 아니 칸된 잡았어 양의 양도 지기 셈 뭐지 봐도 아니 칸이 정도를 치는 데야지 되네 최기 돈도 삼바스 되네 최기 돈도 곰바스 다 뒤주 참말로 다시 제단지 야와 처부 공부기 라브제 요르세트 등에 등모서도 제마서 단다 디나로 직다도 이제 중도 이 심주지 체체 제장을 최주가 나버 주고네 인생 체월 배워서 스타 디체도 두저 당국이 요래스 다 뒤숨 개와 지사와 라메 청주 첨부로 다 알아서 뒤숨도 사베 아니 지게 개와 대바단 지금 다다와다 마온바 아니 간데 유비 개와 망고지 사요 당 알아서 사버려 주버려 다 탐지에니 양오 요래서 모아치고 요래서 당에 제디 가르치도 지기 가르치도 제바 강한 사베 개와 딜리 주여버다 탐지에디 아니 제상가 다달로 좀 그냥 인도 선배 천주고 셈개바지다 닝지 청부제야지다 닝지 청부도 마제베이나 아니 지기 말한 잠시기 지기 타바점지 타바되게 셈나로라 디기 자원이네 준 두고면도 대인도 선배 천주고 셈 마제 랑제레샤 천주고 셈 마제바데 개바 권내 권도 베베체도 아니 오와치기 라메 천주 청부로스 어디 봐도 오와지르샤 구버디디리도 최규ton도 삼바 최규ton도 양년도 삼바
So here in terms of it says then after maintaining compassion and also never defame the teachings and whatever practices you admire with aspiration and 10 spiritual deeds strive diligently dividing day and night, so continually practice. And so actually what's mentioned here in the text is the 10 spiritual deeds, which are actually something from some kind of personal instructions of Maitreya. And here it talks about whatever practices you admire, also with other practices you admire. So the things that the things that we admire about the Dharma teachings, that we do have to look at this, because we have to do we really have trust in those teachings, and do we really have faith in those teachings? Because what can happen to certain practitioners is sometimes do we really have strong trust and strong faith in the truth of the teachings? because sometimes practitioners do kind of pujas and practices, recitations, all kinds of a variety of practices. But they don't check as to whether they're really doing those practices in the correct manner or not. And then after some time of doing those practices, they may feel that there's been no advantage or benefit. There's no been benefit. There's no positive result from it. But this can often come because they haven't, because in order to practice the Dharma correctly, you need sort of perfect, sort of really complete and perfect causes and conditions. And if we're not checking ourselves as to whether we're creating this complete causes and conditions, and then after 40 or 50 years of practice, somebody turns around and says, you know, it can happen, that there's no benefit to the teachings, and then starts to point the finger of the fault somewhere else, for instance, at a guru, at the teachings, or at a guru. But of course, I'm not saying that there aren't some gurus who don't have faults. I'm not saying it like that, but I'm saying that uh, this way of sort of engaging in not being careful about the causes and conditions of our practice, and then feeling there's no benefit and pointing the finger at the Dharma is not good. So here you have what Maitreya advises is on 10 spiritual deeds, and these are sort of with making us so there are sort of vices on how to practice the Dharma, and encouragement to us to take up the Dharma in particular ways. So the first one is making as much effort as we can with our body, speech, and mind. The second is making offerings as much as we can. The third one is a generosity or giving, particularly to the three jewels, but also to the sentient beings as well. The fourth one is listening to Dharma teachings, and the fifth one is reading and studying Dharma teachings, and then taking hold or practicing as the sixth one, taking hold of the teachings by practicing in accord in relation to the meaning of the teachings. The seventh one is sort of looking at ourselves and seeing whether that we practice, are we able to sort of explain that and reveal that to others. And then the fourth one is sort of the eighth one is training deeply in those practices. The ninth one is thinking in accord with the way that the Dharma is presented, and the 10th one is meditating in accord with the Dharma. So sort of examining these, examining ourselves, and then it says, striving diligently, dividing day and night. So, having a kind of continuous practice based in this way of engaging with the Dharma. So I wasn't fully aware of the actual details of these 10 spiritual deeds before, but I did a little research into them, and I think they're important to help us in the context of how we do our Dharma practice. Then verse 23, it says, whatever virtues you gather through the three times, dedicate them towards the unexcelled great awakening. And so particularly, the past, the present, and the future, we have to think about why we are doing our dedications. This particularly in the mind training genre of teachings, that we will be dedicating whatever virtue we have to the. Here it says towards the unexcelled great awakening, but that is also to ourselves and others, developing compassion and bodhicitta, and not being focused merely on, not dedicating that to mere liberation, because that can't that won't give us a full satisfaction, but instead dedicating it towards the development of bodhicitta, and as it says here, towards the unexcelled great awakening. So these are the sort of context in which we should follow and continue with our Dharma practice.
다 심진 소남남 다 디간 오와들이 제베 가라야 찍고 조지기 오와난 게 요즘에 말하는 줘야 돼. 사셰베 개자들 조에 냠도지 오토는 야고요래 제장가 다 딘데기 오와 제셰교 되기 아니 소놈디 가르치기 임바 슬람나 소놈 셈잖아 마다 말한 지어 보고스 다 셈젠데다 담질이야 아니 디지지 주마치다 셈젠데다 그쳐도 수구지 두배지 디기 된다 마도 개메스 대운도 잠배 알아랑 신기 갈소래 아주 전주선바디 야오르미 시기 남셔준도 전주선발에 다 장하지면도 아니 아주 랑든 전주선발을 랑든 요 말에서마도 지금 랑든 뷰 탁슈 제도니의 전주선발을 샤스 가전선은 안조 참말로 신라마된 바 용사코랑 요 말이스 제장가 아니 신 야보지 차야 지기 된다를 끌래 잡셔도 전배 랑신 소수 대단 용의 예인 버버스 대인도 전배도 전주선배공 몰람 잡다한다 전주선배기 지기 안주대 랍자도 지기 내원도 전배 이체 가보도 돼 이나야 대대지 중나 찜으로 냠네 양내양도 친구도 없어요 군중의 랍자디 소만하신 대나래 다그란도와 심지 소남나라다 아니 딘데디 심진그 턴도 제시되디 아니 따도 양라 듬바이 아니 다보 컨데스 저기 인슬람나 아니 공배도 당고요래 따도 양라 듬바이 면엄 전부 다버차 양라 듬바디 다 아란 초사 집정기다 아니 그래서 그래 그래서 그래 다 탑람 삽셔지 차디도가 어다디 요즘에 양라 듬바이 면엄 전부 다바이 다버차 디 유톱지스 그래 듬바이 아니 몰람 톱침은 다버차스
And so here, this is about doing the sort of dedications, and making that aspirational pairs at the end of the practice, having accumulated virtue, and doing the sort of and dedicating that virtue. And so here, after saying that dedicating our virtues of the 3 times to the unexcelled great awakening, Atiśa says to us to disperse your merit to all sentient beings. And so here this is the way that Atiśa himself is doing his dedications of all of the virtues he's created. And so we should do in the same way. We should do the same thing with all of the virtues that we have dedicated. We should dedicate that in the same way that Atiśa has done. And what do we do? What do we do with that merit? The merit since we wish to give all other sentient beings a kind of happiness, the happiness and joy, then there's only one way to do that, and that is to achieve the form body of the Buddha in order to work for the welfare of others. And so that should be we should be dedicating our merit to that form of the unexcelled great awakening, and there's only one way. That's the only way that we'll be able to achieve the welfare of others. But His Holiness sometimes His Holiness says about that the Bodhisattvas don't have any self interest at all, or sort of interest in their own purposes at all, because the Bodhisattvas rely purely on others and only strive and make effort for the welfare of others. But actually what happens is that in the process of doing that, all of the welfare and aims of the Bodhisattva are taken care of. So sometimes it's said that there's no self-interest at all of a Bodhisattva, but their others' interest is their self-interest. And so this is an advice to make prayers in this way of the Bodhisattva. Now this may be hard to trust or hard to accept, but what it says to us here is that we should utter these peerless aspirational prayers, as in the seven limb prayer, which is the most profound method of accumulating merit and purification and accumulation of merit, and that is the supreme aspirational prayer that we should make as a dedication.
Yeah. 다티는 수놈 심전다 다디지부지. 뭐 대달 채는 수놈 단스. 이제 존이 줘버주스. 탐지 심진규 돈도로 오와 sidu zambe chanju gi simbi kwane se wala ta to ji ko shedan man ra chima tanda ta ma chanju simbi kwane aranjo ta ji cho sa ba ta so nam da yi shi gi cho do sa ye shu chung ba yina ani rimbe aranjo gi so nam gi cho da yi shi gi cho zobar gyo gure zobar gyo ba yina kar yorsina aranjo mi yu kar resina dribani se gu gyo res dribani se gyur dis 아니 드분이 세바다 다 두념 가르라서나 산제주 고드 주부 요래 다 니만 되네 손데 아니 랑된양 주벌라 신된양 주 아니 랑된 주베 다들 가르라서나 랑된라 죽을하 두야게요 말에 신된이 제도는 소구줍도 요래 다 딘니 루사베 죽을라 장부시에베이나 다 심진 고란조 응외네 또도 지게 슈지 답지 먼저 또도 지게 랑가를 야마손에야 랑가 때지 야 레나마도 남산 겹트에도 개요 말이지 얘나야 수수 고급 딘디지라 소나 산제주 고방 딘디지라 소나 당원에 지게 구부이네 구데베이네 깔레큐니 메니에서는지 가르치는 레슬람나 아란주 버스지 고데베이나 딱 버스지 가두 리기 요메디 춘이 하모고 지고 고데베이나 딱 들은 연구 연하면에서는 심주 잘하고 그래. 딱 버스지 리기 요래 들은 라토면 산이 리기도 슬라도 좀 또 sembal려도 와. 단 주주직니지나 리그레스. 안 딜레야 탑 가려요래서냐. 탑시 샴바들이 막고지 쇠요래서도 좀 드수 컨디스 하고 그래서 원시가 하고도 말다. 심진 되는 제백값라. 레 두지 차신 차변이 좀 하고 신야라 가르고 요래서도 좀 남캐면은 다 차버다. 제장강 아주 신된 제배 양라라 원시고 그래스. 라버도양 전주 세배 지라 원시 점식이 팽겨 말에 남캐 된도냐 그래스. 제도 좀 아니 지번이 용서 조배 이시추고 아니 남캔디 아니 아주 두고요나 또 남캔디 여배나 아주 딱 지기 딱때스도 고르기레데 이나야开门도 세지 예 니마지 콜 마음 발레데 디지갈레 예코 펜도 쳇도와 섬섬지기 알아 좀 뽑아데 요 사비 쉬고라 아니 닝지냠 그 말에 뽑아냠 그 말에 가두유네 액티브래요 어디래도다 지번이 짐니 장 지번이 장 세주디 미루토바 퇴여베 스탕 달행원에 전에 제가와 상직 땜받은 제 퇴가와 대주기 미루 좀부지데 퇴제 땅원에 퇴여바디 아니 제토바지다 제토바 중송냐베 투저도 디디지가로 차그레스 퇴여베스 라메 천주 토버주 다디 워데라야 아니 노르딘주 송도
So here, in terms of, so then it sort of says, after the previous aspiration prayers of the seven limbs at all times, and then it is, if you proceed thus, you will swiftly perfect merit and wisdom and eliminate the two defilements. So here, particularly when we talk about attaining is sustained by the mind of bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and then we accumulate, we collect together the accumulation of merit and wisdom, and when those two accumulations of merit and wisdom are sort of perfected or complete, then we're able to eliminate the two defilements of afflictive and cognitive obscurations. And actually, at that very moment, once we eliminate those two defilements, then that's the moment when we attain the bodies of the Buddha. This is actually the perfection of our own sort of aims, our welfare, but of course also the perfection of others' aims and welfare. Because, for instance, there's nothing more for our own purposes than achieving the Dharmakaya of the Dharma body of the Buddha, and there's nothing more fantastic for others' purposes than achieving the form body of the Buddha. And so, um, uh, in terms of being able to be of benefit to sentient beings, because if we are a little way along the path, of course we have that wish to benefit, but um, there's that's not we're not able to benefit at all in the same way as if we are able to achieve the fully enlightened state of a Buddha, and then there will be sort of a kind of an effortless way in which we are able to help others. So to use an analogy, then if we know the situation about something, so it's important for us to know the situation of all sentient beings also, and how we can help. For instance, if we're waiting for a bus, and lots of people waiting for a bus, and the bus is delayed, but we don't know how long the bus is delayed, and we don't know that, then even if we're told that the bus will come tomorrow or something, then if we're able to sort of inform the people that the bus will be along tomorrow, then if we get a little bit more relaxed about that. So, in the same way, if we're able to so even if there's nothing to do about it right now, but there's something to do later on, in the same way, when a Buddha, through their omniscient mind, understands the subtle details of the karma of all the sentient beings through their sort of clairvoyant powers of knowing the minds and the subtlest details of the karma of all sentient beings, then and this comes through the attainment of the wisdom, the wisdom Dharmakaya, the fully omniscient mind. And there, even if they're not able to directly help a sentient being immediately in the moment, but they understand that there'll be this understanding that in the future, at this point, I will be able to actively help another sentient being, and then they're filled with courage and confidence to be able to do that. So we've met the Dharma now. We have this precious human being which is hard to meet, and therefore this meaningful opportunity. We should and time. We should take the time to hang on a sec. Since our human existence will be meaningful, you should attain the unexcelled enlightenment. So this is what we should do. Sorry.
다 되네 말아주 강리게 숨는 신체 아니
And now we do the seven jewels, yeah.
이게 강들이야 지금 초아치 요마랑 아제치 요마래 아니 지게 안주 가서 그랬다 남자 운동 안주기 묘몽이 상황을 얘기 내가 정말 지주 요마래 뒤에 살라니 파베 노르치 난 댐바지 최고 그래서 다 파베 노르디 배전디 인사리 다 대베 노르던 수림 노르스 아니 동외 노르던 퇴베 노르스 최영 어저 시베 노르 시럽 니지 노르드인데 노르지 담바디다니 미세바이 노르드인데 미마일라 점이차스 다디기 좀전에 비우지 로모와체 다 더주 참만 노르시도 잠베 남샤 준동 아주 들려야 다고스케 저기요 말이 들리지 여비나 아니 정신기 말한줄이야 지게 남샤 준도 또고마제베 그랬으나 대바 총잡에서 대베 노르되나 또바지 용그랬어 아니 말한줄은 신기 지게 denjogi miludan desul semlen shibi chigyorde tsulbin yago sombeina denjogi milu tawda bres ane tongwe norsine ane shen sosul ya koryagi mi shemba koryagi ane nordi masuna yakshode milu jimba tang ya dres di nornane chodo jobres töbe norsido tangone taba tamje chembe koban tobal라 ane nyabardo 양도 디기 최대 퇴고도 전be töbe norda denguris 최용 어저 시에 norse도 다 수수 규기 개화당 아니 신리야 아니 갈수고리 네바 너비 체도 채용어서 셰바 치고 그랬어. 아니 셰럽뉴 노르드인데 있다. 대다 담제 아니 미럼 주마다 보지. 아니 지 차베 토네 냠ren 체 토바이나 셰럽뉴 노르드 버드리스. 다 노르 담바디 미세바이 노르드인데 있어. 다디 마세게 파도 아니 아란조 지게 가르쳐 그래. 제부 마세요 봐도 롱지유 여바디 다디 노르드리스. 아니 디 미마이는 점이차 시도점비 다 미마인 버스도 아주 단다 미마인 하단 하마인데 미마인세 되게 되지 말이 미마인세도 쪼어디 가르래 시도점비 담지 냠대 받다 수수도 담지 개대 받다 아니 지금 가르쳐 그래 때지 파종어들 대바 매 받다 이지들이 매디니 지라 아니 니리 먹고 시디 주요 말했어 수수 냠는 제고고요 지금 둥금에로 쓴 거래 이마 일런 주미샤 그디 담지 냠디니 메들라 담지 냠디니 메질라 니리 시디 주요 말했어 다지 시부를 가르슬람네 그 담지 냠디어 봐 저장안에 그 파종어들 대바 매년이야 디시라 시주요 말했어 미마 일런 주미차스
And so these are, so then above we've talked about many things like counteracting our pride, bringing down our pride, making sure to prevent ourselves from going under the sway of the mental afflictions. And so and here we come to the sort of the sort of summary of the jewels of the Garland of jewels of the Bodhisattvas, the 7 jewels of the Bodhisattvas. And here it mentioned up above how we should sort of adorn ourselves with these jewels or gems of the noble ones. And here we're not talking about, obviously it's not talking about ordinary, the word used in the translation is wealth. We're not talking about ordinary, accumulating ordinary jewels or ordinary wealth. We're talking about sort of these precious qualities. And so, for instance, here it talks about the wealth of faith in the wealth of the faith in the teachings that we've been discussing here, and the wealth of morality in terms of the practice of ethical discipline, which then is able to bring us this opportunity of the precious human rebirth. The wealth of giving being the most important, of way is the wealth of the way of giving to others in all its different forms. The wealth of learning in terms of studying or learning or literally hearing, and the wealth of hearing and learning about the teachings for the purpose of being able to attain the fully enlightened state. The wealth of conscience, and then the wealth of shame, and then the last one, the wealth so the wealth of being conscientious and also of sort of knowing our own minds and knowing how we are, and also the wealth of shame in relation to the wealth of knowing how to act so that we don't have any shame in the face of others. And then finally the wealth of insight, which is the insight to see, which we mentioned before, about seeing everything as a kind of as dreamlike or as an illusion. And then it says these precious and excellent jewels are the 7 inexhaustible treasures. So they should be something which we can enjoy inexhaustibly, that they will never run out at all. And at the end it says, do not speak of these to those that are not human. So that doesn't literally mean sort of non-human, such as animals or dogs or gods or demigods or something, people who are not human. What it actually means here is in terms of people who have broken samaya, or people who have no faith, no faith, people who are acting in contradiction to their samayas, or have lost faith in the teachings of the samaya. So those people, it says, do not speak about these things to those, literally with no faith, or who have should not be explained to those who've, broken the sabaya or gone in contradiction to the samaya. It doesn't mean literally beings who are not humans.
Okay. 다 되네 돔디 경 르참베 제스심부 시월라 다 지난주 냠렌 두주간에 가서 지기 뷰타고 용하다 마용하다 방법 연구를 다 독스다나 송단될 단다 다 따보자고야도 저데 아니 야 그래서 샘당 아니다 따보자 백기 첨부해스 더 이기 랍제 상만 답사인스 다 천주심기 냠렌 저어디 이기 랍자들와 다이 르르 랍자들 말에 다디 전주선배 랍자들 이기 랍자들 저 답사도 전배 다 다고야고 잡야디 아니 칸에 드라마도 시체 아니 드라마고 쇠마 되체 아니 알이야 양양도 따지치스 미망보유 살아 알이야 양도 따지치지니 랍고야들 라고도 랍고야들 랍모가들 라고면도 따지치스 아니 지부 대두선배 아니 수수기다 이라 아니 전주선배기다 저바도 좀 얘기 제토도 도움도 가르치는 제토고면도 디기 랍자간라 가르치는 얘기 셈만 주버디 가르기 나서는 양나양도 제바체지 아니 대고 요리스 안타 타마데 랍자 뒤견체 지부두두 아니 삼라 다 시제 담아데 능지 아니 자갈이 힘고 관대 마메제 상고 이시닝 변자바 전주선배는 왜 정하시 잡아도 조소 시제다 원도지다 잡샤.
And then right at the end of the text, there are two lines which really summarize everything that's been mentioned in Atiśa's text here. And he's sort of, however excellent our sort of understanding and practice of those things have been, then we need to, he boils it down to guarding our speech and our minds, because essentially most of the practices of the Bodhisattva are mostly related to sort of the body or speech, and most of them are really related to the sort of their advice to develop the mental side of things, not really practices so much for sort of physically, but more mentally and to some extent for the speech. So we need to take, in order to help us to sort of take hold of those two essential sort of doors, he says to us that we need to check again and again our speech and our mind, and he says to us, when you're among others, guard your speech. So thinking about, do I need to say that, or do I not need to say that? Should I say that or not? And what we're also saying, so guarding our speech, and whether we're alone with ourselves, we should also examine our own minds and our own sort of why should we be doing that or not? Can we do that or not? Why are we engaging or not engaging in these things? So we should, in certain things, so we continually sort of guard or examine our own minds when we're alone, and examine and guard our speech when we're with others. And this is the personal instructions of Atiśa. So it says this concludes the Bodhisattva Jewel Garland, composed by the Indian abbot, the Param Karashidana.
Tadi yegi longdi gyonglar buchi xingla ma chape dawa kashi chungwen di shu chungre.
So I received this.
Di hankede kiranzu longlo tana yunye jimbi na di nyamdo long kwe che de yore. Da geche shu longla ani che da tönye che goye gyumjen zodi karese na ta di nyamsu lenche ani di nanglo ne ta susulu ya 디 냠nen 딘디 지기다 니슈 마잡는 지마소 냠도 잠베 에야 딘디 슝춘주 딘디를 양고코 마텝체 다난 데 슈 답사데다 가활로 요르스 베나다 지 디나로니아 베나 지기 디나로리아 베나 퍼징유 골이야 대용고도가 천주기 셈기 셈비 토네 용 세지 천주기 셈기 셈단데 간제레 세원도 잠베 아니 냐바도 퍼징기 슝나로네 되네 배 시버진 남차 송구요래 아니 수구구 두당 수구구 교바 간제 유메 아 되네 양 지기 살람게 남차 지기 지는 가르쳐 그래 천주 셈비 지기 아니 지가 가르쳐네 진백이 냠내 쳐봐도 수능 냠내 쳐봐도 대대가블니 냠내 쳐봐 tel라더니 지봉원도 치원도 잠베스 야 간데서 누구 요매 아니 남조 좋아 아니 지금 아주 남셔전도轻松 쓰지 남바자도 좀 자송그 때문에 슝도 저때 지기 코도 뭐 취비나 아니 산지주 고방 룹세 되냐라 류 용족이 중 찾아만 주변자 디지를 소잡되어 있는 차원도 전에 eng야바도 롱지기 토비 고바디 가르스나 디 항마 용조조바지 퇴섬체바 텔레데네 내가 룹토바지 치기냐베 심슈게베디 롱슈비 다 표현들이 고요래 배나 ngārgi rūpchi lalita benzaagi 아니 chogorji sembe kabla 아니 단다 그래서 잠배 천주 sembe kabla 아니 배 디롱데 세원도 잠배 셈나로라 배더니 단다 치기지기 나로라 아니 단다 도지지기 chogor디 surji 고용도 잠배 아니 가서 그래 신지시고 계획계시 신지시에 측들 고용도 좀be 셈나로라 데마도 버주지 단 네가 거딩 얘기네 다직 제제 딜 퇴섬지 마시는 르마송 세가 삼로를 내원도 좀be 네베 꿀리시 잡도 왔다 아주 단다깔에 제베 다 가지르시 두젠도 저 깔레 따버도 저 오늘잖아 한 토레르샤 근데 제베 갑라니 신이 고랑게 지금 다 나와서 그러베 다 아니 뭐수세 그러베 레지가라 아니 신의 도지지지 초고 창마지 따고 잡아야 돼 중도가 저장은 저 랄레다 변사디 조지에디 디지고 당 아주 롱 따고 잡스도 잠베 롱슈 아니 기부치는 예대 하면 제 롱슈의 변화되긴 심슈 깨지 디가라 중뇌배제제 디간 조토지 쇠고요 디도 잠베 chanjusem 따고 잡아라 퍼진기 슝대당 아니 오미 슝대 따고 맞아봐 아니 제주sem께 백하고 줘요. 근데 이제 좀 지난주 스테이지기 토할 토나지 난고 섬산지게니 심주지 띠브 토버지 나오나 시즌 달래 년디 줄셔게 되니 두체 주시하고
And so I received this oral transmission of the text of the Bodhisattva Garland from Garland Rinpoche, and it was only a few months before Garland Rinpoche passed into the Pure Land. So it was a really amazing sort of virtuous opportunity for me there. And the meaning of sort of giving and receiving of transmission is really in terms of practice. It's not, it shouldn't be something that we just receive an oral transmission of something and then just kind of do very little about it, not make much effort in relation to it. And so we need to sort of really sort of, take hold of that opportunity of receiving the transmission of a text and then to, but how do we sort of, how do we make effort once we've, what do we make our effort in, and where do we place our effort when having received a transmission of something like this? Well, in the Prajnaparamita text, the Prajnaparamita text where it talks about sustaining all of the practices such as ethical discipline and generosity, etc., but sustaining those with the mind of enlightenment, and sort of within the Prajnaparamita literature, there are many sort of explanations about how in order to achieve the resultant state of Buddhahood, how the different sort of paths of practice are employed. So, for instance, what the 5 paths and the 10 grounds of the Bodhisattva path, and explaining how these other practices of the perfections, such as generosity, ethical discipline, etc., become how they sort of affect the resultant state of enlightenment. They also sort of within the Prajnaparamita sort of sutras and literature, there's the 172 aspects of the 3 knowledges, and then and it's sort of, and so we have to get a whole as much as we can, a complete sense of the entire sort of structure or body of the teachings and the paths, and then sort of really understand sort of then through sort of hearing, contemplation, and meditation on those points, we're able to sort of follow the advice and engage with the practices, and then this really becomes a reason, or it becomes really beneficial. It really becomes meaningful for receiving oral transmission. There was a great Indian Siddha called Lalita Benza, I think, and his received the oral transmission of the chanting the names of Manjushri, and in that oral transmission there are some lines, I think, from the sort of cycle of Yamantaka, where it talks about some words spoken by about the Lord of Death from the cycle of Yamantaka teachings, and those words or phrases really struck him very deeply, and he really sort of did hearing, contemplation, and thinking on the cycle of Yamantaka, and really made a great effort and became a great siddha within that sort of lineage of Yamantaka by sort of really taking hold of those teachings, practicing and understanding them, and really sort of taking them to heart. And so when we receive oral transmission, therefore we have to whether it's we have to sort of do the same about understanding, practicing, contemplating and practicing these topics. So, for instance, within the Prajnaparamita literature, there's a lot of information and explanation about bodhicitta, and then in terms of the middle way view of Madhyamaka, we have a whole range of other texts that explain the meaning of these things, and these are designed and should be used to give rise to a sort of enthusiasm and courage, or kind of courageous enthusiasm to engage in the teachings and take hold of them, take them to heart, and make them meaningful. So that's the real meaning of transmission.
No, sadhu. So now, thank you so much. Now this trip to Israel, this classes or teaching discussion is finished from today. Tomorrow I'm going back home, and this trip went very successful from my side. The hospitality, my host, Gila, took such a great care of me, and then Yagi every day gave me a coffee, very good coffee, and then we have such a great bond, of course, with the Gila. And then thank you so much for your help to translate. Was that good? Okay. You didn't hear this part. So thank you so much for your help. Very good teacher, a practitioner, friend, sense of humor, great. And then also I see lots of my old friends here and new friends. And then now the Dharma friend has provided all this all. So this Dharma friend of Israel is very important for me. Not because they invited me, but because through them we are getting so much opportunity. Lama gets opportunity to deliver the Dharma. Students get some teachings and to change and motivation, different way of thinking, different ways of methods to deal with the emotion. So, which is so relevant for today's life, especially after the October 7, many people are going through trauma and fear. So without this Dharma, to be honest, there's nothing much to do actually. And deep inside brings so much hatred, uncomfortable. How much you say, oh, I feel sorry for them too, but deep inside then you go locked in. So only the Dharma is the one to become much, much stronger. So this is something we really need to thank Dharma Friends of Israel and wish this community grow and bring more of the activities for the sentient beings and for the Israel. And always my own benefit is good food. So I was fed very well. So only the complaint is the thermos here, the water is always cold, not warm. That's the only complaint. It is to show everything cannot be perfect. Other than this thermos, everything fine. Just kidding. Thank you very much. Do we do the dedication? Okay. Oh, sir. Oh, the daughter. I can't do. Otanda de ranzu de tanda tos parje cha de tela ya. Kando jidu. Tanda jigu. Anju molam de jaburba. Moada molam chebe kabla. Enyaba do di semla sha che. Nyang kong chembe. And simje mangbuji. Never done tanda zara de cha de to changma jig sel tapche. And deda tamje joko cha to ya. 야 모두네 최근 냠네 주투야 아니 어디지기 용투비하기에는 뭐는 결혼했어.
It's referring to someone who is the general situation there in Lesotho, but also somebody who is sick and is experiencing obstacles, and therefore to make prayers for them, but it also in the sense that they're all beings. For making prayers for all the beings who suffer from obstacles and sickness, to be able to quickly recover from those, and to be able to engage in the Dharma. So making prayers for them and all beings.
אפשר לחשוב שאנחנו מקדישים לא רק עבור נורית, אלא גם עבור כל כך הרבה אנשים שהם קשורים לנו או שלא קשורים לנו, כאלה שחווים מכשולים קשים, בעיות קשות, אנחנו נקדיש גם עבורם
올라서 다음에 다다.
אז אנחנו נסיים את המפגש שלנו היום הכנו מנדלה ארוכה, אוקיי.
For the online people.
Yeah, I will first.
For the online people, thank you so much for joining and zooming. Even it's optional, but you choose to voluntarily participate. So sending lots of greetings from Israel. I really enjoyed hummus, but you cannot eat hummus. Anyway, see you very soon in India and other rest of the people. Thank you very much. I rejoice all your practices. And Simon, thank you very much. I see you very soon in Bodh Gaya. Okay, amended.
אוקיי, אז אנחנו נסיים עם קודם כל בקשת מנטלה, סליחה, כהכרת תודה על השיעורים האלה, ולאחר מכן אנחנו נקדיש. For the people at home, we will finish up with mandala recitation, the Thanksgiving mandala, and then we'll say a few dedication prayers in Hebrew. So after the mandala prayer, you can say your own dedication in your own languages.
So I'll read it in, you can either do it in Tibetan there or I'll read it. Om Vajrabhumiyaham, the mighty golden crown, Om Vajrarekhyaham, encircled by a wall of iron mountains. In the center, Mount Meru, king of mountains. In the east, noble body. In the south, rose apple. In the west, cattle using. In the north, unpleasant sound, body and noble body. Yak tail, another yak tail. Deceitful and traveling the supreme path, unpleasant sound, and companion, unpleasant sound. Precious mountain, wish-granting tree, wish-fulfilling cow, uncultivated harvest, precious wheel, precious jewel, precious queen, precious minister, precious elephant, precious horse, precious general, great treasure vase, grace goddess, garland goddess, song goddess, dance goddess, flower goddess, incense goddess, light goddess, perfume goddess. Sun and moon, precious parasol and banner of victory over all directions. In the center, the riches of gods and humans, perfect, lacking nothing, pure and enchanting. To the glorious, holy, kind root and lineage gurus, and especially to you, the great, perfect, pure Lozan Tuban Dorji Chang, the gloriously good Kapche Sekon Tsenshab Serkong Rinpoche, the possessor of the complete teachings, whose holy name is being uttered here with good reason, as a thanksgiving for your great kindness and having excellently given us the profound Mahayana teachings, we offer this as a Buddha field. Please accept it with compassion for the sake of transmigratory beings, and having accepted it out of your great compassion for sentient beings, please bless me and all other mother transmigratory beings, equally in the extent of space. This ground anointed with perfume strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon. I imagine as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. And now do the request for the Guru to remain for a long time. May my perfect pure Guru's life be long, and his white actions flourish in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teachings of Losang Drapa always remain. dispelling the darkness of the transmigratory beings of the 3 levels. Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnya
אנחנו נסיים בהקדשות. מעבר להקדשות שנאמר עכשיו, כאשר נאמר את ההקדשה לאריכות חייו של הבודהיסטווה, למה אפשר גם לכלול בתפילה הזאת גם את אריכות חייו של סרקום צנצ'ב רינפוצ'ה וגם של מורים אחרים. אז בואו נאמר את התפילות האלה ביחד. בזכות חסד זה לא אשיג במהרה את מצב הגורו בודה ולהוביל למצב זה את כל הנודדים עד אחד. לו תודעת ההערה העילאית תקרת הערך שטרם נולדה תיוולד. לו זו שנולדה לא תתנוון ותזכה עוד ועוד. כמו שמנג'ושי אז הרוח וגם סמנטה בדרה ראו נכוחה את הדברים כפי שהם, ככה בלי
Thoroughly investigating in accord with all I've heard day and night through the 4 reasonings, mind, body, and reflection on these topics of contemplation, in this discernment sever all doubts. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri who knows reality, and just like Samanta Bhadra as well. In the land circled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful Chenris in Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends.
באמצעות פוטנציאל זכות זה, להשיג את מצב ידיעת הכל, אבי ספר בית גמי, והשחרר את הנודדים מאוקיינוס הקיום שגלה ועצומים סוערים בזקנה, חולי ומוות. ונחזור להקדשה לאריכות ימיו של הדלאי למה. בארץ זו המוקפת רכסי הארגון מושלגים, מקור הרווחה והאושר ללא יוצא מן הכלל, אבל הוא כשווה רב עוצמת טנזין gyatso. לו תיוותר עד קץ הקיום. Chanchu Semcho Rinpoche
May the precious, sublime, precious Bodhicitta arise in those in whom it has not arisen, and where it has arisen, may it not decline, but go from strength to strength. By these merits may transmigratory beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the enemy of faults, and be freed from the ocean of samsara, disturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. So Rinpoche now sort of bestow the names for those who'd taken this lay pratimoksha vows earlier.
סרקום rinpoche ולקבל את השם.